Welcome back to Star Trek Online, everybody. I'm your host, the Housecoat Gamer, and today we're taking a look at the final Dyson Destroyer, and arguably the best looking, because it kind of reminds me of the White Star from Babylon 5. I believe it is Rallus-Class, though I suppose I'll just be ripping the title from the C-store when I'm done. Arguably, this is the best looking of the lot, and probably the best statted. Well, in terms of capabilities. Its console layout is something to be questioned, because unlike the other two, this is a temporal ship. Now, unlike the other two, this is a pure science boat. Everything else is just secondary. Which is depressing. This thing would have made a perfect warship. Though that's the White Star talking. Anyway. Intel Universal, Science, Commander. In this case, all they did was just change the specializations around. Kind of pointless, really. As for its other defining traits, siphoned defenses. Well, what do you know? You can actually gain secondary shields. No, I don't think I usually count starship traits, just consoles. But then again, I generally don't use anything other than a certain set of starship traits that boost weapons damage. But then again, I'm a gunboat driver, not a space magician. Use a temporal ability or a drain ability, you gain 77 shields for 20 seconds. And finally, we have the final part of the Dyson Dynamics set. The Reverberant Shield Inversion Projector, which increases shield power and shield capacity. And its AoE ability basically drains shields and gives secondary shields to allies. Remember when I said that, as far as I'm concerned, science ships are basically just... that the science faction is just basically glorified buffing, cleansing, and applying debuffs? Only proving my point. Of course, I'm pretty sure that some science drivers are going to argue with me on this. Go ahead. I'm not going to deny it. I'm not a science driver. I prefer shooting things. Now, why don't we get into the rest of the set? The two-parter includes extra proton damage that scales with auxiliary power, plus 50% threat generation. Exactly what a science captain's gonna need to buff, debuff, and generally make a nuisance of itself while basically playing the part of white mage. Meanwhile, protonic overclocking. Essentially, if you don't take damage, you gain 2 subsystem. You gain 2 auxiliary auxiliary power for 20 seconds. For every 2 seconds you are not taking hull damage. Which is pretty much impossible because you're taking hull damage at least once every second because somebody's going to be shooting at you. Unless, of course, somebody takes all the aggro away, in which case, yeah. Probably not very useful for solo players, but very useful for people on teams where somebody is aggroing and you want to remain nice and hidden. You know, other than just having the ships and getting the tokens, this set hasn't exactly endeared itself to me. Now, don't get me wrong. Along with the Obelisk Carrier and the original Dyson set, these were actually my first Tier 5 starships. My first event ships. So I do have something of a soft spot for them. Their Tier 5 counterparts, on the other hand, have been nothing but a disappointment. Well, Tier 6 counterparts. On the plus side, though, at least everything they have can be mounted to other starships. Meaning, if you actually want to do something with them and not have to touch the ships at all, that's up to you. As for why I'm conducting this review without even flying them, I think you already know the answer to that question. I said it in the first one. I have too much experience with the Tier 5 versions of these ships. And generally, what applies to the Tier 5 versions applies to the Tier 6 versions. But what do you think? Am I wrong and just treating these ships a little unfairly? I don't mind constructive criticism. I do mind people being assholes, though. Again, I fly gunships, not support ships. I like shooting at things, not occasionally casting heal on people. But what do you think? Leave thoughts in the comments. Housecoat Gaming, signing off.